Totally destroying North Korea would be a force to defend ourselves and our allies. You could read that possibly to even open up a justification for preventive war against North Korea.
That is a potential justification, but the words totally destroying a nation of 25 million people, that borders on the threat of committing a war crime.
Why does he have to be so provocative all the time? We're talking about annihilating millions of people. This is not baby stuff. This is a guy who was leading The Apprentice, as now is talking about nuclear war. I can't take it.
Look, this wasn't a speech. This was a sermon. And he wasn't a president, he was a preacher up there, given his dark world view about threats and conflict.
A war crime, Dana Perino, is that a fair criticism?
Well, it's interesting that does anyone actually say that Kim Jong-un is threatening a war crime when he says he's going to destroy the United States?
That's a good point.
If he has, because retaliation would not be a war crime. I don't think in the history of the country, of the world, that retaliation against innocent people would be a war crime. So I think that some in the media, and I understand this, still relitigate for themselves their coverage in the lead up to the Iraq War. And I actually think that the intelligence here is not in question.
No, there's rockets flying everywhere.
We actually can see it.
Right.
So I think this is a very different situation.
Kimberly,
Yes.
You knew this was going to happen. He gives a very, very pro-American, pro-human speech, which was well received by most people. But the media seizes on the one assertive comment he makes about North Korea. Come on.
Well, I would imagine that they thought carefully when they put that line in there, and it's based on their intelligence gathering and what they know, what works with him. This has become a full-time job dealing with the Rocket Man. Like, he has a funny name, but he's a really bad guy.
Right.
The only solace is he won't live forever. But, you know, that family carrying on in the way that they have, you know, he's just as bad, or probably even worse, more impetuous and impulsive and radical than his father.
Yeah.
But he murdered everybody in his family pretty much at this point.
And the way he eats, too, he can't live forever.
I'm worried that he's going to like the nickname Rocket
That's the
Man.
thing.
You think it's too
like, he's going to be like, yeah,
nice
I'm
of
the
a
Rocket
nickname?
Man. Because he loves American pop culture. He probably loves Elton John. He's like, yeah, he likes the image of being a Rocket Man. And the way he translates it to his people is probably like, I am the greatest person that ever was to walk this earth.
You think Trump made a bad nickname choice? Dana.
I actually think
the president has never made a bad. This one you like.
I like ones that are not about Americans. How about that?
Okay, that makes
Tell the
sense.
behind the scenes right here. Because Jesse was like, this is the greatest. And Dana's
just
like, I
watered
actually
me.
like this one.
I'm wondering if he has to pay.
Not
I wonder
a fan of
if
Line
he has
10.
to pay royalties to Elton John and Bernie Taupin for using the nickname, because that's quite possible. It's not surprising to see people react with hysteria.
Right.
And they haven't quite gotten the concept that that's not the best way to counter this president. If you're going to level a critique, do it calmly and rationally, and they never are capable of restraining themselves to step back for a minute and even do some basic fact-checking. You know, Terry Moran's going off there half-cocked, and all of a sudden he's an international lawyer ready to frog march him to the Hague. And I think that might be putting the cart in front of the horse. Is the rhetoric the most delightful thing I've ever heard in my life?
Right.
No, but here's the problem. Nothing else has worked. And even libertarians that I have spoken to, they talk about the fact that you've got a guy, never mind intelligence. You've got a guy who's armed, he's got nuclear weapons, and he's talking about hitting American targets. He's talking about annihilating our country. He's telegraphing that himself.
And he's demonstrated the capability.
No mystery here.
They're going further in length in terms of distance and capability. So it's a real threat.
All right, Juan.
Well, I mean, I think that the question is our behavior. I don't think there's any doubt about what Kim Jong-un's up to. I think everybody thinks that he's, you know, loose screw or whatever you want to say about him. What strikes me is when the president, who previously was talking about fire and fury, and everybody said, oh, well, look, it's calmed down. Well, it didn't calm down. In fact, there have been more tests than ever now, and with higher grade of munition in the missiles and going farther and more of a threat to our allies in the region. So now he comes back and he says, you know what, we're going to totally destroy them. So now, media on the left, from your perspective, from my perspective, just people who are media said, wow, that's kind of, you know, incendiary language talking about nuclear war. And then everybody said, no, 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 it's not nuclear war. But it is. That's what he's talking about. And you know what? If you're going to destroy them, then you have to think about consequences. But again, This is President Trump, who loves not only nicknames, which I think is an act of genius on his part. He gets the greatest nicknames. But at this point, you've got to then say, well, what's Russia going to say about it? What's China? You're going to go in there and destroy people? South Korea's right there. Japan's right there. What are you saying? Is this just for an American audience?
No,
is this Steve Miller just saying this is another version of, the inaugural address?